My fiancé called me a worthless cheater and publicly dumped me at our engagement party. I simply smiled and walked away. This morning, my phone exploded with 37 missed calls. His sister just exposed who really betrayed him that night. You're nothing but a worthless cheater. The engagement is off. David's words sliced through the celebratory chatter like a chainsaw, instantly silencing the crowded restaurant. 75 pairs of eyes turned to stare at us. Our closest friends, my tearful parents, his stone-faced family, all frozen in collective shock. The champagne glass in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Just moments earlier, I had been the happiest woman alive. After 3 years together and 6 months of planning this engagement party, everything was perfect. My designer dress, the 5-tier cake waiting to be cut, the string quartet playing our song. Then David's college friend Marcus whispered something in his ear, and my fiancé's face transformed into someone I didn't recognize. "You think I wouldn't find out about you and Chris?" he continued, voice dripping with disgust. "Did you really believe you could fool me?" My mind raced desperately. Chris? David's business partner? The man I'd met exactly twice, both times with David present? The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Instead, I took a deep breath and looked David straight in the eyes. This was the man who had promised to love me forever just last night, now publicly destroying me based on what? A whisper? A rumor? Your silence says everything, he spat, yanking the $12,000 engagement ring from my finger with such force it left a mark. I want you out of our apartment by tomorrow. My mother's sob cut through the silence. My father half rose from his chair, face flushed with anger. But I placed my champagne glass carefully on the table, smoothed my dress, and did something that seemed to surprise everyone, especially David. I smiled, not a happy smile, but the kind that acknowledges when someone has just shown you who they truly are. 3 years together, and he didn't even ask for my side of the story. Didn't give me the benefit of a single doubt. Without a word, I picked up my small clutch purse, walked calmly through the maze of shocked faces, and stepped into the cool September night alone. Behind me, chaos erupted, voices raised in confusion, my mother calling my name, David's sister Emma running after me only to stop at the doorway, her face a mixture of horror and something else I couldn't quite read. "Jessica, wait," she called. But I kept walking, my heels clicking steadily on the pavement, each step taking me further from the life I thought I had. I didn't cry until I was safely in the Uber, and even then they were quiet tears, the kind you shed when you've just narrowly escaped something devastating without fully understanding how. I spent that night in a hotel, ignoring the flood of messages and calls. By morning, I'd already contacted a lawyer about the apartment lease and arranged for my brother to collect my belongings. What I didn't do was defend myself or beg for understanding. Some accusations don't deserve the dignity of denial. That was 4 days ago. I've been staying at my best friend Mia's apartment, trying to piece together my shattered plans, when this morning, my phone practically vibrated off the nightstand. 37 missed calls from David, his parents, even Marcus. But it was Emma's text that finally made me pick up. "I have security camera footage from Chris's building the night he supposedly met you. It wasn't you in those pictures Marcus showed David. It was Rachel. I'm so sorry, Jess. David knows the truth now." Rachel, David's ex, the woman he'd always insisted was just a friend whenever I expressed discomfort about their late-night texts. The irony would be almost poetic if it didn't hurt so much. My phone is still buzzing as I write this. David's latest voicemail begs for forgiveness, says he made a horrible mistake. His mother called in tears. Even Marcus sent a shamefaced apology. But all I can think about is how quickly, how eagerly, the man who claimed to love me believed the worst, without a shred of evidence, without even giving me a chance to speak. So for now, I'm letting the phone ring. David and I were supposed to be the perfect couple. At least that's how it looked from the outside. We met 3 years ago at our mutual friend Taylor's New Year's Eve party. I was standing on the balcony escaping the noise when he handed me a glass of champagne and joked, "Looks like I'm not the only one who thinks this party is too loud." Our conversation flowed from zodiac signs to career plans, from favorite travel destinations to childhood memories. I was a pediatrician, he was a commercial real estate developer. Our worlds shouldn't have intersected, but that night we talked for 4 straight hours until the party ended. "You know, I've never talked to a girl so long I forgot to check the time," he said as he walked me to my Uber. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where we shared a bottle of wine and our dreams. By the 3rd date, I'd met his parents. 6 months in, we moved in together. Every step felt so natural, as if we were following some perfect relationship script. He's the most thoughtful man I've ever met. I once told my mother about David, and truly, he would remember that I preferred white tulips over roses, would have dinner ready when I came home from night shifts, would plan elaborate surprises for my birthdays. Looking back, though, there was something performative about his thoughtfulness, as if he needed to prove something to the world. Our social media was filled with carefully staged photos. Kisses beneath the Eiffel Tower, sunset walks on Maldivian beaches, New Year's Eve embraces in Times Square. #relationship goals was our friend's common comment. David was particularly invested in maintaining this perfect couple image, posting at least 3 photos of us weekly with emotional captions. But behind those glossy pictures, there were undercurrents in our relationship that weren't so perfect. First was Rachel, David's college girlfriend. She would text him at odd hours, messages ranging from, "just checking in," to, "I really miss you." Whenever I questioned this, David would dismiss it. "She's just a pathetic ex who can't move on. Don't you trust me?" Then there was his friend circle, especially Marcus. This buddy, who'd followed David since college, always maintained a strange distance from me. Once at a barbecue, I overheard Marcus telling another friend, "David could do better. Jessica's just a phase." When I told David about this, he laughed it off, saying I was being too sensitive and insisting Marcus was just drunk and talking nonsense. There were also the subtle signs of David's controlling nature. He would suggest what I should wear when meeting his business partners. He would casually glance at my texts with male colleagues. He would surprise me by showing up at the hospital when I worked late. I mistook these behaviors for romance and care, but now I see them as obvious signs of distrust. Most confusing was David's shifting attitude toward marriage. Early in our relationship, he talked frequently about our future, planning our wedding and children. But by our second year, whenever I brought up concrete wedding plans, he always found reasons to postpone. "Let me finish this project first. Wait until the housing market improves, when your work schedule isn't so hectic." Until last Thanksgiving, when David got down on one knee in front of both our families. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Jessica, you're the love of my life, and I can't wait to spend forever with you." I said yes, of course, tears blurring my vision, completely missing the fact that Rachel's message had just flashed on his phone screen during the proposal. For 6 months after the engagement, I threw myself into wedding preparations, booking venues, selecting dresses, designing invitations. David barely participated beyond frowning at the budget. Whenever I asked for his input, his response was always the same: "Whatever you want, babe." Looking back, perhaps I should have seen those red flags. But love blinds us, especially when you've invested 3 years of time, energy, and emotions into a relationship. The week before our engagement party, David's behavior became unusual. He started working late frequently, heading straight to his home office when he returned, emerging only late at night. His phone never left his side, even accompanying him to the bathroom. He canceled our dinner plans twice, citing emergency meetings. I told myself it was just pre-wedding jitters, a phase every engaged couple experiences. The morning of our engagement party, I discovered he'd come home at 3 a.m. and slept in the guest room. "Worked too late, didn't want to wake you," he explained vaguely, but the faint perfume on his suit jacket wasn't mine. I pushed down my unease, telling myself this was our special day and I shouldn't create drama over small things. I spent 4 hours on hair and makeup, put on my carefully selected white dress, and wore the pearl earrings David had given me, my mother's idea. Pearls represent purity and fidelity, perfect for an engagement celebration. When we arrived at the restaurant together, David seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone. But as soon as his parents and my family arrived, he immediately transformed into the perfect fiancé, arm around my waist, showing off my ring to everyone, recounting how he had planned the most romantic proposal ever on Thanksgiving. Marcus arrived 40 minutes late. When he walked into the restaurant, something was off about his expression. He went straight to David, whispered something in his ear, then showed him something on his phone. In that moment, I watched David's expression shift from confusion to shock to anger, finally settling on me with cold contempt. And then my world collapsed. "You're nothing but a worthless cheater. The engagement is off." When I heard those words, I wasn't confused. I felt a strange relief. Perhaps that's why I could smile calmly and walk away. On some level, I had always known our relationship was built on a fragile foundation, and this moment was simply the inevitable collapse. I just never imagined the collapse would be so dramatic, or that the truth would be so ironic. I spent the first 48 hours after the engagement party disaster in a fog of shock and disbelief. Mia's apartment became my sanctuary, a small one-bedroom in Brooklyn, far from the luxury high-rise David and I had shared in Manhattan. Her worn-out couch wasn't exactly comfortable, but it was safe, and that's all I needed. "You can stay as long as you want," Mia insisted, handing me a mug of hot chocolate that first night. And for what it's worth, anyone who knows you would never believe that garbage about you cheating. But that was the problem. People were believing it. By Sunday evening, my phone was flooded with concerned messages from mutual friends, each one thinly veiling their morbid curiosity behind expressions of sympathy. "I'm here if you need to talk. These things happen for a reason. I never would have thought you'd do something like this." I stopped checking social media after seeing Marcus's cryptic post. Some people aren't who they pretend to be. Truth always comes out. It had over 50 likes, including one from David. My parents were devastated. Mom called hourly, alternating between tears and rage. How dare he humiliate my daughter like that? Dad, normally the calm one, threatened to have a word with David, a prospect that terrified me more than anything. Please don't, I begged him. It will only make things worse. The hardest part wasn't the public humiliation or even losing David. It was realizing how quickly 3 years of love could transform into something ugly. How someone who had held me through my grandmother's death, who had promised to stand by me forever, could so easily believe the worst about me without a shred of evidence or even a conversation. On Monday morning, I forced myself to return to work at the pediatric ward. Children don't care about your broken engagement when they need their doctor. For 8 hours, I focused on fevers and ear infections instead of my shattered personal life. It was almost a relief. Dr. Mitchell, you look tired, one of the nurses commented. Long weekend, I replied with a forced smile. That evening, I sent David a brief text. I'll have my brother pick up my things on Saturday. Please leave my belongings in boxes in the hallway. I don't want to see you. His response came seconds later. Jess, we need to talk. Please. I didn't answer. Wednesday was when the first cracks in David's certainty appeared. Emma, his younger sister, had always been friendly toward me, but we weren't particularly close. So when her name lit up my phone, I almost didn't answer. Jessica, she sounded breathless. Something's not right about all this. Marcus is acting weird. What do you mean? I asked, my heart suddenly racing. He was showing some photos to everyone at brunch yesterday, supposed proof of you meeting Chris at his apartment building. But the timestamp was from a night you and I were at that charity gala together. Remember? The Children's Hospital fundraiser. A cold chill ran down my spine. The Children's Hospital fundraiser had been 6 weeks ago. I'd spent the entire evening with Emma and several colleagues. There were even official photos of us in the hospital newsletter. That's impossible, I whispered. Exactly, Emma replied. So I asked to see the pictures again, and Marcus got super defensive. Then I noticed something else. The woman in the photos has a tattoo on her wrist. You don't have any tattoos, right? No, I don't. My mind was spinning. But you know who does have a wrist tattoo? A small star? Rachel. Rachel. The name hit me like a physical blow. Are you saying? I don't know what I'm saying yet, Emma cut in. But I'm going to find out. David's my brother, and he's being played somehow. And you deserve to know the truth too. I spent that night unable to sleep, my mind replaying every interaction with Rachel over the years. How she always seemed to appear at events looking stunning. How her eyes followed David around the room. How she always managed to stand just a little too close to him in group photos. Thursday morning brought another text from David. Please call me. I think I've made a terrible mistake. I deleted it without responding. By Thursday afternoon, Emma had called twice more, each time with more questions than answers. She had spoken to the doorman at Chris's building and learned that a woman matching Rachel's description had been a regular visitor, always when Chris's wife was out of town. I think Rachel and Chris might be involved, Emma theorized. But I don't understand how that connects to you or the photos Marcus showed David. I was beginning to form a theory, but it seemed too calculated, too cruel to be believable. Friday morning, everything changed. I had just finished my rounds when my phone exploded with notifications. Emma had sent a series of urgent texts. Call me now. I have the security footage from Chris's building. IT was Rachel in the photos. With trembling hands, I stepped into an empty consultation room and called her. I got the security guy to show me the footage from the nights in question, Emma explained, speaking rapidly. The woman meeting Chris was definitely Rachel. She was wearing your red coat, the one you thought you'd lost last month. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. My missing coat, Rachel's unexplained appearances, Marcus's loyalty to David that bordered on obsession. There's more, Emma continued, her voice dropping. I confronted Marcus with the footage evidence. He broke down and admitted that Rachel had convinced him to help her. She told him you were cheating on David with Chris, showed him the photos of herself in your coat, entering Chris's building. Marcus was supposed to discover the affair and tell David. But why would Marcus go along with it? I asked, although I was beginning to suspect the answer. Because Marcus has been in love with David since college. Rachel figured that out and manipulated him. She promised that once you were out of the picture, she'd help Marcus console David and finally tell him how he felt. The calculated cruelty of it all left me speechless. 3 people had conspired to destroy my relationship and reputation. Rachel out of obsession for David, Marcus out of unrequited love, and Chris. Well, Chris was just collateral damage in their scheme. David knows everything now, Emma finished. I showed him the security footage this morning. He confronted Rachel and Marcus together. Rachel actually tried to deny it until Marcus broke down and confirmed everything. I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. And what did David do? He's devastated, furious. He kicked them both out of his apartment and has been trying to reach you ever since. That's why your phone's been blowing up with calls. Indeed, while we'd been talking, 7 more missed calls from David had accumulated. 37 in total since the morning. Jessica, Emma's voice softened. He made a terrible mistake, but he loves you. As I hung up, I stared at my phone, watching it light up again with David's call. The truth was out, the conspiracy exposed, justice served in a way. But as I sat there, one question kept circling in my mind. Does it even matter anymore? Because the real truth, the one that hurt more than any betrayal, was how easily David had believed the worst about me. How quickly he'd thrown away 3 years and a future together. How publicly he'd humiliated me without a second thought. The phone continued to ring in my hand. After a long moment, I made my decision. I let David's call go to voicemail, then another, and another. After the 37th missed call, I finally listened to one of his messages, my finger hovering over the delete button the entire time. Jessica, please, his voice cracked with emotion. I know now what happened. I was an idiot, the biggest idiot in the world. Please let me explain in person. Please. I sat on Mia's fire escape that evening, watching Brooklyn fall into darkness, the distant Manhattan skyline glittering like the life I thought I'd have. You don't owe him anything, Mia said, handing me a glass of wine as she joined me. Not a conversation, not forgiveness, nothing. I know, I whispered, but I owe myself closure. That's why, after 3 days of relentless calls and messages, I finally texted David back. Le Chain. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., 30 minutes of your time, that's all you get. Le Chain was where he'd first told me he loved me, 18 months earlier. A quiet French bistro with dim lighting and private booths. I chose it not for nostalgia, but because I knew it would be busy enough that he wouldn't make a scene, yet private enough that we could talk. I arrived 15 minutes early, requesting a corner table with a clear path to the exit. The maitre d' gave me a knowing look. Perhaps he'd seated enough breakup dinners to recognize the signs. David arrived exactly on time, looking like he hadn't slept in days. The confident, polished man who normally commanded every room was gone, replaced by someone with shadowed eyes and rumpled clothes. He'd lost weight in just a week. Jessica, he breathed my name like a prayer as he slid into the seat across from me. Thank you for. I raised my hand to stop him. 30 minutes, David. I'm timing it. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know what Rachel and Marcus did. Emma showed me everything. The security footage, the messages between them planning it all. Rachel even admitted everything when I confronted her. And I kept my voice steady, my face neutral. And I'm more sorry than I can ever express. His eyes filled with tears. I should have trusted you. I should have talked to you. I should never have believed. That's just it, isn't it? I interrupted. You did believe it. Immediately. Without question. Without even giving me a chance to speak. I leaned forward slightly. 3 years together, David. 3 years. And you threw it all away based on a whisper and some photos you didn't even examine closely. He reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. I was scared, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Things were getting so real with the wedding plans. Part of me was looking for an escape hatch, and when Marcus showed me those photos, I think I seized the opportunity without even realizing it. His honesty surprised me, but it also hurt more than his excuses would have. So I was right, I said. It wasn't just about the photos. You were having doubts. No, yes, I was anxious about the wedding, but that's normal. I never doubted that I loved you. Love isn't enough, David. Trust is what matters. Respect. And you showed me exactly how little of either you had for me. The waiter approached our table. I waved him away without looking up. What about all those late nights before the engagement party? I asked. Were you with Rachel then too? His face flushed with shame. Not Rachel. I was just at the office. Sometimes at the bar with Marcus. I was panicking about the wedding, about forever. But I swear, Jessica, I never cheated on you. Emotionally, you were already gone, I said quietly. The David I thought I knew would never have believed those accusations. He would have defended me, fought for me. I know, he whispered. I became someone I don't recognize, and I hate myself for it. I checked my watch. 10 minutes left. His eyes widened in panic. Jessica, please. I love you. I've always loved you. We can start over, go to counseling, rebuild the trust. I'll do anything. For the first time since sitting down, I allowed myself to really look at him, the man I'd planned to spend my life with. There was genuine pain in his eyes, genuine regret. Part of me wanted to reach out, to say we could try again, to believe that with enough work, we might recapture what we'd lost. But another part, a stronger part, knew better. I've been thinking about that night, I said, about how quickly I walked away. Do you know why I didn't fight, didn't argue, didn't try to defend myself? He shook his head slowly, because in that moment of absolute betrayal, I realized something. I'd been accommodating your insecurities for years, tolerating your subtle control, making myself smaller to fit into the narrative you wanted for us. And when you accused me in front of everyone, it was like waking up from a long dream. It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. It was exactly like that, I said with quiet certainty. You want to know what I felt when I walked out of that restaurant? Relief, David. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. His face crumpled. So there's no chance? Even knowing the truth, I pulled a small velvet box from my purse and placed it on the table between us. Inside was the engagement ring he'd yanked from my finger at the party. Emma returned this to me yesterday. She found it in your apartment. I slid the box toward him. The truth doesn't change what happened, David. It doesn't change who you revealed yourself to be. Please, he whispered, tears now falling freely. Give me one more chance. Across the restaurant, a young couple was celebrating something, their laughter floating through the room. Once that had been us. My 30 minutes are up, I said, gathering my purse. I wish you well, David. I really do. But whatever we had is gone. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist. Jessica, wait. Let go, I said firmly, looking pointedly at his hand until he released me. This is the last time we'll see each other. Your things from my apartment are being donated tomorrow. Please have my remaining belongings shipped to Mia's address. So that's it? 3 years and you can just walk away. I looked down at him, this broken man I once thought was my future. You walked away first, David. At the first test of your trust, you chose to believe the worst. That's not love, that's fear, and I deserve better. With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, shoulders back, head high. Outside, the summer evening was warm, the streets filled with life and possibility. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia. How did it go? I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. It's over, I typed back. Truly over. And I'm okay. 2 more messages appeared. One from Emma, apologizing again and asking if we could stay in touch, and one from an unknown number that I knew instinctively was Rachel. I deleted the latter without reading it. As I walked toward the subway, another text came in from Mia. Dr. Harmon called from Boston Children's. They still want you for that fellowship if you're interested. I stopped mid-stride. The prestigious pediatric trauma fellowship I'd applied for months ago, but had reluctantly declined because David didn't want to leave New York. Tell him I'm very interested, I replied. New city, new start. 3 blocks later, I paused outside a small jewelry store. In the window display was a delicate necklace with a single pearl pendant. I thought of my mother's words about pearls representing purity and fidelity. But to me, now they represented something else, something that forms under pressure, layer by layer, beautiful and complete on its own. I went inside and bought it for myself. 3 months can change everything. Boston welcomed me with crisp autumn air and the promise of a fresh start. My fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital kept me busy 6 days a week. My mind focused on pediatric trauma cases rather than relationship trauma. The small apartment I'd found in Cambridge was nothing like the sleek Manhattan high-rise I'd shared with David, but its warm wooden floors and bay windows felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived before. You look different, my mother commented during our weekly video call. More yourself. She wasn't wrong. The Jessica who had walked out of Le Chain that night had set something in motion. A return to the woman I was before David, but stronger. I'd cut my hair short, started running along the Charles River every morning, made new friends among my fellow doctors. Simple changes, perhaps, but significant. Mia had visited twice, marveling at my transformation. I never realized how much you dimmed your light for him, she observed during her last trip. It's like meeting the real Jessica for the first time. Emma and I still texted occasionally. She'd severed ties with Marcus after his betrayal and was keeping her distance from Rachel, who'd apparently made several dramatic attempts to reconcile with David. According to Emma, he'd refused all contact with both of them. He asks about you sometimes, she admitted in one message. There's nothing to tell, I replied, and meant it. The truth was, I rarely thought about David anymore. The engagement debacle had faded to a dull memory, a cautionary tale I'd occasionally share with new friends over wine. My ex-fiancé accused me of cheating at our engagement party. I'd say, now able to laugh about the absurdity of it all. Turns out his ex set me up with stolen clothes and security camera footage. Their shocked expressions always made me add, "Don't worry, I got a fellowship in Boston and a much better life out of the deal." By December, I'd settled into a comfortable routine. Work, research, running, occasional dates that never developed into anything serious. I wasn't ready, not yet, but I was open to the possibility of someone new. And then came the medical conference in Chicago. The annual Pediatric Emergency Medicine Summit was mandatory for fellows, 3 days of lectures and networking in a massive downtown hotel. I flew in on a Thursday evening, checked into my room, and headed to the welcome reception, more interested in the promised dinner than the socializing. The grand ballroom was packed with hundreds of doctors, all wearing the same lanyard name tags, all engaged in the specialized small talk of medical professionals. I filled a plate with appetizers and found a quiet corner to observe the crowd. Dr. Mitchell? Jessica Mitchell? I turned to find a tall man with kind eyes and a familiar face. Dr. Lawson? I blinked in surprise. James Lawson. I can't believe it, he grinned, extending his hand. It's been, 6 years? At least, I smiled, genuinely pleased to see him. Since med school rotation at Mount Sinai. James had been a third-year resident when I was a medical student. He'd been known for his patience with students, his brilliant diagnostic skills, and for turning down an invitation to the exclusive Carter Neurosurgery Fellowship to pursue pediatrics instead, a decision that had scandalized our professors but earned him my silent admiration. "I heard you were at Boston Children's now," he said, his voice warm with genuine interest. "Pediatric trauma, right? Impressive program. How did you know that?" He looked slightly embarrassed. "LinkedIn, I suppose. Your name came up in my suggested connections a while back." We fell into easy conversation, catching up on the years between. He was now running the Pediatric Emergency Department at Northwestern Children's, had published several papers on innovative approaches to pediatric trauma care, papers I'd actually referenced in my own research. "I never got to thank you properly," I said after we'd moved from the reception to the hotel restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine over dinner. "Your advice during that rotation changed the course of my career." "What advice was that?" he asked, genuinely curious. "You told me that surgeons save lives, but pediatricians save futures." I smiled at the memory. I was dead set on becoming a surgeon until that conversation. His eyes crinkled when he smiled. "Well, if I influenced your path, the pediatric world is better for it. Your research on community-based approaches to childhood trauma is groundbreaking." "You've read my paper?" I felt a flush of pleasure. "Of course. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. We're launching a multi-center study on trauma-informed pediatric emergency protocols, and your methodology would be perfect for the Boston arm of the project." The conversation shifted to professional collaboration, ideas flowing between us with an ease I'd forgotten could exist between two people. By the time we finished dinner, we'd outlined the framework for a joint research initiative. "This has been," he paused, searching for the right word, "unexpected and wonderful. Would you like to continue this discussion tomorrow? Perhaps over breakfast before the first session?" Something about his direct yet gentle manner, the way he'd been fully present throughout our entire conversation without once checking his phone, the respect with which he'd engaged with my ideas. It all stood in such stark contrast to what I'd grown accustomed to with David. "I'd like that," I replied. We met for breakfast the next morning, and lunch after the midday session, and dinner again that night. By the last day of the conference, it felt like reconnecting with an old friend rather than networking with a colleague. "I'll be in Boston next month for the regional directors meeting," he mentioned as we waited for our respective airport shuttles on the final day. "Perhaps we could continue our discussion on the research project?" "I'd like that," I said again, surprised to find I truly meant it. Back in Boston, I threw myself into work with renewed energy. The potential collaboration with James's department had opened new avenues for my research, and I found myself genuinely excited about the professional possibilities. 2 weeks after Chicago, I received a text from him. "Boston plans confirmed. January 14th to 16th. Dinner on the 15th to discuss project details." I started to type a professional response, then paused. There had been moments in Chicago, his hand briefly touching mine as he passed a conference program, the way his eyes had lingered on my face when I spoke passionately about my work, how our conversation had gradually shifted from purely professional to personal without either of us noticing. Taking a deep breath, I responded, "Looking forward to it. I know a great place near the harbor." That evening, as I stood by my apartment window watching snow drift down on Cambridge, my phone buzzed with a notification. An email from David, the subject line, "I hope you're well." 6 months ago, such a message would have sent me into emotional turmoil. Now, I felt only a mild curiosity. I opened it. "Jessica," it began, "I've respected your wishes and kept my distance these past months. I hope Boston is everything you hoped for. I'm writing because I'm finally selling my apartment and found some of your medical books in storage. I can ship them or donate them, whatever you prefer. I'm doing better. Therapy helps. I hope someday you might find it in your heart to forgive me, but I understand if that's not possible. Wishing you happiness, David." I read it twice, searching for any emotional reaction within myself. There was none, just the peaceful recognition that some chapters of our lives simply end, making room for new ones to begin. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in a clean, white blanket. I typed a brief, polite response about the books, then set my phone aside and turned back to the research notes spread across my desk. Notes for the project I would discuss with James next month. For the first time in years, I felt completely aligned with myself, my work, my purpose, my future stretching before me with possibilities I had yet to imagine. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, eyes open, heart cautious but no longer closed. Some endings, I had learned, are actually beginnings in disguise. 6 months later, "You're sure about this?" James asked, helping me carry the last box from the moving truck into my new apartment. "About downsizing to a one-bedroom?" "Absolutely," I replied, setting the box labeled kitchen on the counter. "My Cambridge place was always too big for just me." He smiled that warm smile that still made my stomach flutter, even after 4 months of dating. That's not what I meant. I knew exactly what he meant. My new apartment was just 3 blocks from his in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. The Boston Fellowship had ended, and Northwestern Children's had offered me a position that was too good to refuse, heading up the newly established Pediatric Trauma Research Division with complete autonomy and a substantial budget. The fact that it meant being in the same city as James was, well, a very welcome bonus. I'm sure, I said, moving closer to him. The job is perfect. The city is wonderful. I wrapped my arms around his waist. And the company is exceptional. Our relationship had developed slowly, deliberately. After that January dinner in Boston, we'd maintained a professional collaboration for 2 months, our interactions gradually warming from colleagues to friends. By March, we were flying between Chicago and Boston whenever our schedules allowed. By April, we had acknowledged what was happening between us was serious. By May, when the Northwestern offer came through, the decision felt natural. Dr. Mitchell, I believe that's the nicest thing you've ever said about me, he teased, kissing me softly. The truth was, James couldn't have been more different from David. Where David had been charismatic and showy, James was quietly confident. Where David had needed constant validation, James was secure in himself. Where David had tried to mold me into his perfect partner, James seemed constantly delighted by discovering who I actually was. Most importantly, while David had jumped to the worst conclusions at the first suggestion of impropriety, James had shown unwavering trust when my past inevitably came up. It had happened during his visit to Boston in March. We were walking along the harbor after dinner when he'd gently taken my hand for the first time. I should tell you something, I'd said, suddenly nervous. My last relationship ended, dramatically. The broken engagement? He asked quietly. I'd stopped walking, surprised. How did you know about that? Medical circles are small, he admitted. I heard rumors at a conference last year. Something about an engagement party scene? But I never put much stock in gossip. I'd told him everything then. The false accusations, the public humiliation, the setup by Rachel and Marcus, all of it. When I finished, we'd reached a harbor viewpoint, the city lights reflecting in the water. Thank you for telling me, he'd said simply. It sounds like you went through hell. The worst part wasn't the accusation, I'd confessed. It was realizing the person I'd planned to marry didn't know me at all, or worse, didn't want to know the real me. James had been quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. For what it's worth, he'd finally said, I'd like the chance to know the real you, however long that takes. He'd kept that promise, approaching our relationship with patience and genuine curiosity. We'd talked for hours about everything, our childhoods, career aspirations, fears, dreams. We disagreed sometimes, even argued occasionally, but always with respect, always with the understanding that we were on the same team. Now, unpacking boxes in my new Chicago apartment, I marveled at how much had changed in a single year. Earth to Jessica, James waved a hand in front of my face, breaking my reverie. Where'd you go? Just thinking about how different things were this time last year, I admitted. I was still with David, planning that engagement party. Regrets? He asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. I shook my head firmly. Not one. That ending led me here. I gestured around the sun-filled apartment, at the life I was building. I needed that experience to recognize this. The doorbell rang, interrupting us. That's probably the delivery guys with your couch, James said, heading to the door. I told them between 2 and 4, but when he opened the door, it wasn't furniture delivery personnel standing there. It was Emma, David's sister. Emma, I gasped, frozen in place. What are you doing in Chicago? She looked different, her hair shorter, her style more professional than the bohemian look she'd favored in New York. I moved here 2 months ago, she explained, looking nervously between James and me. Northwestern Medical Center. I'm doing my residency in obstetrics. The world gets smaller, I murmured, still shocked. We'd kept in touch sporadically via text, but she hadn't mentioned relocating to Chicago. James, sensing the tension, excused himself tactfully. I'll go check if that furniture truck is nearby. He squeezed my hand as he passed, a silent gesture of support. Once he'd left, Emma stepped further into the apartment, her eyes taking in the half-unpacked boxes. So the rumors are true. You really did move to Chicago. News travels fast, I observed, motioning for her to sit on one of the kitchen stools. Coffee, please. As I prepared 2 cups, an awkward silence settled between us. Does David know you're here? I finally asked, sliding a mug toward her. No, she said quickly. We don't talk much these days. That surprised me. What happened? She sighed, cradling the mug in both hands. A lot changed after you left, Jessica. David changed. He went through this phase of partying, dating random women, acting like he was 20 again. She paused. Then about 3 months ago, he just stopped. Started therapy, became almost reclusive. We had a huge fight when I decided to come to Chicago. He thought I was abandoning him. I felt a twinge of something. Not guilt, exactly, but a kind of distant sadness for the man I once thought I'd spend my life with. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it, but that doesn't explain why you're here today. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in tissue paper. I found this when I was packing up. It belongs to you. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small leather-bound book, my grandfather's copy of The Little Prince, that I'd thought lost in the move from David's apartment. Thank you, I said softly, running my fingers over the worn cover. This means a lot to me. There's something else, Emma admitted, looking uncomfortable. I ran into Rachel last week in New York. My stomach tightened. And she's engaged. To Chris. I stared at her, then started laughing, a genuine, belly-deep laugh born of the sheer absurdity of life. You're kidding me. Chris. The same Chris from the fake affair photos. Emma nodded, a smile breaking through her serious expression. Apparently they actually did start seeing each other around the time of everything. His marriage was already over. He just hadn't told anyone at work yet. So her elaborate scheme to frame me and win David back was happening while she was actually involved with Chris? I shook my head in disbelief. That's karmic justice? Emma suggested. Something like that. I took a sip of coffee. Does David know? He will soon. The wedding's in October, and apparently Chris is inviting the whole office. She hesitated, including David. I considered this information, searching for any trace of jealousy or hurt. There was none, just the faint sense of a circle completing itself. Good for them, I guess, I said finally. I hope they're happy. Emma studied me carefully. You really have moved on, haven't you? Before I could answer, the door opened and James returned, followed by 2 delivery men carrying my new couch. Found them downstairs, he explained, directing them where to place the furniture. I watched him interact with the delivery men, his easy manner, the respectful way he spoke to them, the quiet efficiency with which he handled the paperwork. Such a contrast to David's impatient interactions with service workers. Emma followed my gaze, her expression softening. He seems like a good man. The best I've known, I said simply. After the delivery men left, and James busied himself assembling a bookshelf in the bedroom, Emma prepared to leave. I should go, she said, gathering her things. I just wanted to return the book and, well, see how you were doing. At the door, she hesitated. Jessica, can I ask you something? How did you do it? Move on so completely. I thought about her question carefully. I realized something important, Emma. What happened at that engagement party wasn't the tragedy, it was the revelation. It showed me who David really was, who I was becoming with him. The real tragedy would have been if I'd never found out. She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I'm glad you're happy. You deserve it. After she left, I stood by the window, my grandfather's book pressed against my chest, watching Emma disappear into the Chicago afternoon. 1 year ago today, I had been selecting my outfit for an engagement party, blissfully unaware of how drastically my life was about to change. James appeared beside me, wrapping an arm around my waist. Everything okay? I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. Better than okay. Outside, Chicago stretched before me, a city of second chances, new beginnings, unexpected paths. In the distance, Lake Michigan glittered in the summer sun, vast and full of possibility, like my future. What are you thinking about? James asked softly. I turned to face him, smiling. That sometimes, the happiest endings come from the most painful beginnings. And I wouldn't change a thing. 2 years later, Dr. Mitchell, there's someone asking for you at reception. I glanced up from the case file I was reviewing, a 7-year-old with multiple fractures from a car accident, to see Nurse Garcia standing in my office doorway. I'm in the middle of preparing for surgery, I replied, checking my watch. Can it wait? She says she's come from New York specifically to see you. A Ms. Winters. The name took a moment to register. Rachel Winters. I hadn't heard that name in over 3 years. Tell her I'll be out in 15 minutes, I said, my curiosity overcoming my initial instinct to refuse. I finished my pre-op notes and made a quick call to James to let him know I might be late for our dinner reservation. Something unexpected came up, I explained. Anything serious? He asked, concern evident in his voice. Just a ghost from New York, I replied. I'll tell you about it tonight. When I finally walked into the hospital's reception area, I almost didn't recognize her. Rachel's once-long blonde hair was now cut into a practical bob, her designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and trousers. She looked ordinary, human. Jessica, she said, standing awkwardly as I approached. Thank you for seeing me. What brings you to Chicago, Rachel? I asked directly, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the waiting area. She clutched a large envelope to her chest like a shield. I needed to give you this in person, and to apologize face to face. I studied her for a moment. The Rachel I remembered had been confident to the point of arrogance, always perfectly composed. This woman seemed smaller somehow, hesitant. Apologize for what, exactly? I asked, although I knew perfectly well. The fake photos? Stealing my coat? Destroying my engagement? Or something else I don't know about yet? She flinched at each accusation but didn't look away. All of it. What I did was unforgivable. I know that. Then why are you here? I wasn't being cruel, just direct. It's been 3 years. Rachel took a deep breath. I'm in therapy now. Have been for a while. Part of my recovery is making amends where possible. I raised an eyebrow. Recovery? I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder last year, she explained quietly. It doesn't excuse what I did to you, but it helps explain some of my obsessive behaviors. The extreme measures I took. She handed me the envelope. These belong to you. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me and David at various events, me entering our apartment building, me at a cafe with Mia. Surveillance photos, essentially. You stalked me, I said flatly, feeling a chill despite the warm hospital air. For months before the engagement party, she admitted, shame evident in her voice. I was obsessed with getting David back, convinced you had somehow stolen him from me, even though we'd broken up years before you met. I flipped through the photos, disturbed by this tangible evidence of how thoroughly my privacy had been violated. Why show me these now? Because you deserve to know the full truth, and because I'm destroying all of it, all the evidence of my obsession. My therapist suggested I might need to face you as part of that process. I handed the envelope back to her. Keep them, burn them. I don't need these reminders. There's one more thing, she said, pulling a smaller envelope from her purse. A letter from David. My heart stuttered briefly. David, he doesn't know I'm here, she clarified quickly. I ran into him at Chris's birthday last month. We talked, really talked, for the first time since everything happened. He wrote this for you, but said he'd never send it. I stared at the sealed envelope, my name written in his familiar handwriting. Why would you bring me this? Rachel looked at me directly for the first time. Because I destroyed something that might have been real. And while I can't fix that, I thought you deserved to hear his final words. Whether you read it or not is up to you. After she left, I sat in the reception area for several minutes, turning the unopened letter over in my hands. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread. Another part needed closure I hadn't realized was still missing. Finally, I slipped it into my lab coat pocket and returned to work. There was a child who needed my help, parents who were counting on me. The past could wait a few more hours. That evening, James and I walked along Lake Michigan after dinner, the skyline glittering against the night sky. I'd told him about Rachel's visit, shown him the letter I still hadn't opened. What are you going to do with it? He asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me doesn't want to open old wounds. We stopped at a bench overlooking the water. James took my hand, his touch warm and reassuring as always. Whatever you decide, I'm here, he said simply. It was one of the countless reasons I loved him, his unwavering support without trying to influence my decisions. In the 2 years we'd been together, he'd never once made me feel anything less than completely respected and trusted. After a moment's hesitation, I carefully opened the envelope. Jessica, I've written this letter a dozen times over the past 3 years, but never had the courage to send it. Perhaps it's better this way, words on paper that you'll never read, a confession without the expectation of forgiveness. I failed you in the most fundamental way possible, not just at the engagement party, but throughout our relationship. I was so focused on crafting the perfect image of us that I never truly saw you. I wanted you to fit into the life I'd imagined, rather than building a life around who we really were. The truth I've come to accept in therapy is that I didn't trust you because I didn't trust myself. My father's infidelity destroyed my parents' marriage when I was young, and I always feared I'd follow the same path. Instead of facing that fear, I projected it onto you, looking for signs of betrayal where none existed, creating the very distance I was afraid of. When Marcus showed me those photos, some part of me was almost relieved. Here was the confirmation of my worst fears, the excuse I needed to run before you could leave me first. It was cowardly and unforgivable. I want you to know that I've spent these years trying to become someone better, someone who might have deserved you. I've confronted my trust issues, my need for control, my inability to be vulnerable. I heard you're in Chicago now, building a successful career, perhaps building a life with someone new. I hope with all my heart that you've found what I couldn't give you, trust, respect, and the freedom to be fully yourself. You once asked me how I could throw away 3 years based on a whisper and some photos. The truth is, I was throwing it away long before that. Every time I doubted you, every time I tried to shape you into someone else, every time I prioritized appearances over authenticity. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I hope you found happiness. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Always, David. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the envelope, aware of the tears on my cheeks but feeling strangely peaceful. Are you okay? James asked softly. I nodded, wiping away tears. Yes, better than okay, actually. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight dance across the lake's surface. You know, I said finally, for the longest time after the engagement disaster, I defined myself in opposition to that experience, as someone who had survived betrayal, who had rebuilt her life despite humiliation. James listened attentively, his eyes never leaving my face. But that's not who I am anymore, I continued. That chapter doesn't define me. It's just one of many experiences that shaped me into the person I've become. I took the letter and carefully tore it into small pieces, letting them fall into a nearby trash can. No regrets? James asked. Not one, I replied with certainty. That ending brought me here, to this life I've built, to you. I squeezed his hand. I wouldn't change a thing. Later that night, as we lay in bed in our now shared apartment, James propped himself up on one elbow, studying my face in the dim light. Move in with me, he said suddenly. I laughed. James, we already live together. This is our apartment. No, he shook his head, suddenly serious. I mean the house, the one I showed you in Oak Park. Let's buy it together. The beautiful Victorian with the wraparound porch and the maple tree in the backyard, the one we'd toured on a whim last weekend. Are you sure? I asked, my heart racing. That's a big commitment. I've never been more sure of anything, he said softly. I love you, Jessica. I love your strength, your compassion, your resilience. I love the way you've built this remarkable life on your own terms. I want to build the next chapter together. 3 years ago, I had stood in a crowded restaurant, watching my carefully planned future crumble around me. Now, I was being offered a different future, one built on a foundation of genuine trust and respect, one I had helped create through my own choices and courage. Yes, I said, the word carrying the weight of everything I'd learned on this unexpected journey. Let's build something real together. Outside our window, Chicago slept under a blanket of stars, the city that had given me a second chance, a new beginning. The past was finally, truly behind me, not forgotten, but transformed into wisdom that would guide me forward. Some journeys begin with an ending. Mine had led me exactly where I was meant to be.